Good morning, everyone. I'd like to introduce myself. I'm David Bunzell, the Executive Director of the PSIA. We have a great session, a webinar that we're going to be hosting today. I'm going to make a brief introduction to the various people who will be participating. 𝘮𝘰𝘦𝘬𝘮 from Elitech, Jack Ryan from LastLock, 𝘮𝘰𝘬𝘬𝘦 of 𝘴𝘪𝘮𝘬𝘦, David Edwin of EMS Integrators, Ronnie Thayer of Smithy Solutions. Without further ado, I'm going to shift over to Jason.
All right, thanks, David. So we'll get right to the meat of today's webinar, and that is the question of what is Public Key Open Credential, or what we affectionately commonly call PKOC, right, as the acronym. But at the end of the day, really what we're talking about is leveraging industry standards for X509 certificates, right? So this is the same exact cryptography that's behind every banking transaction, retail transactions, that type of level of cybersecurity. We're using the same exact thing. The difference is when we talk about public key infrastructure, or PKI, PKOC as a credential and a specification that the Physical Security Interoperability Alliance has brought forward uses the PK without the I. And that's really the main point of this. So now what happens with Public Key Open Credential and sort of the magic that goes on behind the scenes is as soon as you install an app or you put the SIO onto a smart card, then a public and private key pair is going to be generated following the same industry 509 type standards. That means the key pair is, and the private key in particular, is going to be stored in the secure element or the trusted platform module of the smartphone or smart card. And from that point, the private key is never exchanged, right? And what we're really doing is using the validation through the signature of the public key by the private key to ensure that the public key that's being used is in fact authentically from the source that we believe it is, right? And this is the same exact as an endorsement to the, what Public Key Open Credential is. This is exactly what FIDO or Alero or other specifications today that are moving towards more secure credentials are embracing, right? This asymmetric world. So this is elliptic curve cryptography, which is known to be some of the more robust, again, cyber secure technology that you can rely on. PKOC is a bit different in the sense that it is decentralized, right? Again, we're using the public key pair without the infrastructure or centralized certificate authority, which keeps it simple, right? And that, certainly takes a lot of complexity out of what most of the market needs. And there may be other aspects, government use cases, or aware certificate authority for revocation, or other use cases that other standards supply. But we believe Public Key Open Credential really is good for 80% of the market who purely needs a credential number in a more secure way than is typical for the industry for the last 30 years to be able to do that, but most importantly, in a truly open way, right? And that's one of the last points I'll make here is that the Public Key Open Credential specification is not owned by any one company or individual. It is truly an industry standard, freely available to anybody who wants to access it from the Physical Security Interoperability Alliance.org. And on the right-hand side of this slide, where we're talking about the definition, you can see the simplicity of basically the public and private key pair. We sign that, you get this hash signature that can then be validated on the reader once the credential sends it, and ensure that in a very highly secure way, again, following elliptic curve cryptography, that this credential came from a valid source. So that, in the end, is what Public Key Open Credential is. And so I'm going to turn this over now to talk a little bit more about getting into the cards, the Bluetooth, and OSDP aspects.
Hey guys, my name is Jack from LastLock, where we focus on kind of delivering self-powering access technology specifically for co-working spaces. And so I'm sure many of you are familiar, but co-working spaces, have a number of unique challenges in regards to access that can make it pretty difficult. High member turnover, lots of visitors, complex integration needs, scalability costs. And so at LastLock, we've been leveraging PKOC with one of our customers, 𝘴𝘪𝘮𝘬, in order to complement their existing access systems while not adding, any additional credential costs. And so thus far, the feedback has been very positive from the users and the customer 𝘴𝘪𝘮𝘬. Members are enjoying the convenience of having the option of a mobile credential on their phone. There's a lot of management benefits in terms of, some lower recurring costs or not having to pay additional kind of credential fees for another type of credential. And for a lot of the visitor management and like guest users, contractors, issuing access done digitally can greatly kind of decrease the time in order to get people access. And so looking ahead, we're hoping to expand PKOC across more co-working locations, broadening the compatibility across access products with the partners here today and as an organization. And so we're really excited about what the future can be in terms of asymmetric, sort of access within co-working, where LastLock sort of plays a role in making this efficient, secure, and scalable system. With that, I'll turn it over to the next presenter.
Hi, this is GW from Taglio. I'm going to talk about PKOC on NFC cards. So PKOC is two things. It's a credential, which is based on a public key, and it's also a protocol specification that can use that credential to authenticate. We have currently two protocol specifications for Bluetooth and also for NFC-capable cards and readers. So how do we implement PKOC on NFC? Well, you need a reader and a card. And when we say NFC, we mean cards that can be read by NFC readers, such as those on your smartphone. But NFC itself uses ISO 14443, which is the most common high-frequency protocol. So that means that if you have a reader today that supports ISO 14443, for example, supporting DeskFire, then you can also implement PKOC on that reader. Also, the reader has to do the cryptography. So those are the two things that you need for a reader. On the card side, PKOC can also be implemented on a cryptographic card that supports 14443. So the card securely stores the PKOC private key. It never leaves the card. And the card does the cryptography on the card. So you can implement this on a Java card, a smart card using the Java card operating system, using a Java applet. Today, there are many, many vendors out there that have such cards. And in fact, it is the most common type of card in the world today, because that is really what a payment card is. If you look in your wallet, your credit card is based on the exact same smart card technology that can be used for PKOC NFC. So why do we want to implement PKOC on a card? So PKOC provides us with a migration path. It is a migration path from legacy cards to public key-based authentication. And it does so while keeping things as much as possible the same for the end user. This is the modality that they're familiar with. This is what they know. It supports the same enrollment and identification processes, and it supports the same business model and logistics that we have today. So it's something that we can do today, push into the channel and make it work. Even when we start moving to Bluetooth and other technologies, other protocols that support PKOC, you will always want to have 100% coverage of the user population. So there will also always be room for a card in that so that you can cover the entire user population. And from my perspective, the most important thing is that it provides a future-proof migration path. So the future is open standards, not proprietary technology. Open standards that use certified cryptographic methods. And the future is public key. We see it being deployed everywhere currently. So what's the status today? Well, we have 4 different vendors that have readers in the market. If you see the photo, you can see some of those. We have multiple open source reader implementations, so if you're interested in playing with it, you can download those. And we have several different cards commercially available. I would say the message about PKOC NFC is real and is available today. I'd like to hand this over to the next presenter.
Thanks, GW. My name is David at EMSI. And as GW has already spoken about on PKOC over NFC, we also have PKOC implemented over Bluetooth. And as we looked at the phones, we had to see which technology to use, whether it would be ultra-wideband or other technologies, over which PKOC should be implemented. And Bluetooth has become the universal connector for iPhones and Android phones and pretty much every smartphone out there. And it also has continued to improve. So Bluetooth, so the phones have now become enabled with secure elements, and the reader ICs have also have secure elements. So this enables us to support PKOC directly. And Bluetooth has also tended to improve as the years have progressed from the iPhone 4S. It looks like a short while ago, but it's almost a decade. And now we have Bluetooth where it supports ultra-wideband like channel sounding as well, where Bluetooth can operate on nearness. And typically with Bluetooth and apps, you could provide firmware updates, you could do configs, and you have a wide choice of apps which are all PKOC compliant. So pretty much any app which is PKOC compliant would which will allow you to have the richness of integration when you are integrating PKOC into your ecosystem, as you do, bring in mobile credentials. And you support, of course, as GW said, there would be cards. Cards are the incumbent solution, and Bluetooth would be more of a transitional, the next path towards which we are going to for mobile credentials. So we would typically be supporting both, as you see, cards and Bluetooth. I now ask Rodney to take over the next part of the presentation.
Hi there, I'm Rodney Thayer from Smithy Solutions. So we're going to talk about how would you connect the reader back to the infrastructure if you have an access control system using this. So the preferred way is to use Open Supervised Device Protocol, OSDP. This is a protocol between readers and panels. It's been around several years now, so there's lots of product in the market that can do this today. And it's an alternative to WeGan. There certainly, of course, are going to be other solutions that for readers to be connected to the infrastructure, USB, various other RS-232, various other things. But if we're trying to, in the situations where people are trying to make sure they have a secure end-to-end solution, the preferred method is to use OSDP. It provides secure communications between the reader and the panel, so the secure delivery of the PKOC credential. And it's a protocol meant for use in sort of an IoT kind of a context where the device is a smart device and you want to be able to update it with configuration or firmware updates. And because it can do that kind of thing, it supports migration from legacy credentials. So if your reader does DesFire today or procs or some other capability, and you just have to do a firmware update to the reader, then you can push firmware updates through OSDP from the central site. So if you want to, if you want to update things that way, you can certainly, many vendors are supporting update over Bluetooth also. So there's multiple update options available. Because OSDP is a bidirectional protocol, it not only supports readers being able to do PKOC, but there are situations where the cryptography, the secure element, et cetera, might be actually back in the panel. And so the OSDP protocol, because it's got this bidirectional capability, there's also an alternative set of messages that's been specified to allow you to have the panel do the crypto operations to continue the PKOC processing properly. And OSDP it's sponsored by the Security Industry Association. It's an international standard, and it's been in the marketplace for several years. So this is not a new thing you would have to add to your environment if you're running appropriate kinds of readers. And if you look at the marketplace of the sort of the reader hardware that's available today and for the past few years, it tends to include secure elements, strong cryptography, and OSDP communications as an option. Back to you, Jason.
All right, perfect. Thank you. So a lot of information from a number of us presenting here today, and now let's pull this all together and look at what the the total picture looks like. So we heard from GW at Taglio about the NFC and the credential side of things. So whether you have the credential, or as we heard from Dave Edwin from EMSI about the Bluetooth capabilities, right? So app or cards that can now support Public Key Open Credential. That's where the journey starts on the credential side at step 1. That credential then communicates securely and would need to be enrolled into physical access control, identity management, print solution, EV charger, whatever wanted to use this credential. And so there are USB reader devices today that also support Public Key Open Credential that can enable the enrollment of these credentials securely. But you could also develop apps that would interact with the mobile device or credentials, that might use web services or APIs to be able to do enrollment. So there's definitely room for making a much more modern user experience for enrollment, but just fundamentally, an enrollment station can be supported fully today using Public Key Open Credential. And then we move to step 3. Now that the credential has been generated, it has been enrolled, all of that done securely, I now have my readers that are advertising NFC or Bluetooth and beaconing for these PKOC credentials, and we will securely do that transaction through the signed and validated public key, as mentioned in the definition at the start of today's presentation. And there is also the option not to do the decrypt on the reader, but be able to actually have the PKOC module sit in the door controller itself. So now the reader is just passing through the PKOC payload, and you're doing all the decrypt in the most secure place, right? Not outside the edge or perimeter door. So all of those options exist and can be supported today using Public Key Open Credential. And now you see through 4 steps what that total ecosystem can look like. Next slide. So next, we'll just talk about how do we know, like if you're a consultant, an integrator, an end user, how do you know whether what you're getting is truly in line with the specification and handling PKOC in the appropriate way? So we are putting together a validation process. Today we have it, but it is a little more manual. You can either through the working group participation or submission to the Physical Security and Interoperability Alliance, we can validate logs as well as look at Wireshark traces of the communications and validate that PKOC is being done appropriately, right? And that will give that confidence. But we are building the screenshots that you see here are tools that are available from the Physical Security and Interoperability Alliance that give you the credential on the left, and as well if you're using any of the NFC cards. On the right-hand side is the reader simulator that supports both NFC and Bluetooth. And this app, what you can see there at the bottom of the screen is what the full public key looks like, the 65 bytes or 520 bits. But on the screen of the mobile device, it's actually giving you the breakdown of how that public key is used for access control, with the options for either 256-bit, 128-bit, or 64-bit credentials, and 64-bit being the minimum, where you have enough entropy and randomization to not need the legacy problems of our industry of things like facility codes, issue codes, site codes, right? And that's, again, one of the benefits of PKOC. It's more secure and a full asymmetric encryption, but then gives you this flexibility for backwards compatibility where maybe something can't handle a full 256-bit credential, right? But it's always interoperable because regardless, it always comes back to the same full public key. So this is one of the ways, and through these tool sets, as we go forward, this reader simulator will be the self-tester that will be able to validate and give you the assurances that the credentials that you're using are in fact in compliance with, or the readers that you're using are in compliance with the PKOC specification. So really exciting to know that this is going to be a tool that'll be able to be in the hands of of anybody to validate that the specification is being used appropriately. So with that, David, I think you're up next, and we're going to be opening up for Q&A.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. Thanks to all the speakers. Yes, if you look up in the top of the screen, there is a Q&A button. If you want to click on that, you can send questions to us. But in the meantime, we have a couple of questions that came in already. GW, can PKOC be used on a card with existing technologies?
The answer is yes. Yes, it can. It can definitely be used on a card with low frequency, but also on a card with high frequency. And so with things like DESFire and CIOS, you can have a multi-technology card that also supports PKOC for sure.
Thank you. Jason, are all the components needed for a PKOC implementation currently available?
Yes, today you are able to purchase cards, as GW was just talking about. Also available are readers which support PKOC. So for cards, Taglio, Century Enterprise, Secure Element Solutions, the Plastic Card Company are all card manufacturers that have and do supply NFC plastic credentials, smart cards with the PKOC SIO on them. Additionally, for readers, INID, as well as EMSI have NFC and Bluetooth respectively. ELITech also has NFC and Bluetooth available readers. So all of those are able to be purchased today. And then when it comes to the credential side for apps for iOS and Android, again, availability through EMSI, LastLock, Johnson Controls, ELITech, SaferScan. And there are a few others out there too on the App Store if you're looking for PKOC. So what I would say to that question is yes, all of the components, meaning credential and readers, are available to include enrollment devices through USB. So you can go out today and purchase what's needed to be able to test, validate, and implement a PKOC solution.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jason. Rodney, what are the advantages of using PKOC in an OSDP implementation?
Well, the advantage is that you get to leverage the stronger security that you get from a PKOC credential, either Bluetooth or NFC based. And because the OSDP supports is a standard specification, there are lots of different readers out there, so you can potentially migrate from one reader solution to another if you want to do that, or upgrade with within your existing vendor's product line. And because OSDP already was doing secure communications and it was already ready to handle large credential numbers, it's already positioned properly to handle something like a PKOC credential.
Great, thanks, Rodney. Another question for David Edwin. Why do I need to be concerned about using asymmetric encryption?
Like today, we have symmetric cryptography on in a lot of systems. So, which means that if the key is compromised, then we tend to compromise the entire system. While in public key, including PKOC, the private key is always kept within the secure element, so it's never exposed. So that always creates a level of protection for any of the systems based on public key based systems, which is at this point, which is asymmetric.
Great. Question for the group. Is there any buy-in from any U.S. government agencies to use PKOC in their credentials?
So I can take that one, David. So today, and anybody who's familiar with PIV and the FIPS whole process, that there is an absolute process that we have to go through in order to meet government requirements. Today, Public Key Open Credential has not gone through that process, but that certainly doesn't preclude that it could. So I think the direct answer of that is, certainly there's been interest that has been brought to the Physical Security Interoperability Alliance about doing that, and we'll continue to explore that route. But as of today, it does not have the official approvals or certifications for that purpose.
Just to add to that, the technology that's inside the government PIV cards is using asymmetric cryptography, elliptic curve, and other things. And so the tech that they're using today and the tech you would use for PKOC are the same, and the vetting processes are very similar. So PKOC is very close to delivering the same kind of functionality that a PIV card delivers. They do the same sort of asymmetric operations to validate the credential.
Okay, for the group, any plans for NFC support on mobile devices?
Again, yes, that is absolutely feasible to do. And of course, when we start to talk about NFC on mobile devices, that gets into digital wallet. So we definitely, for road mapping of this and bringing forward, we'll be looking at how PKOC can be implemented, with Apple, with Google, with Samsung. But today it is not. There is no support for digital wallet at this time, right? That is roadmap and future conversations.
Okay. GW, does PKOC tie the credential number to the CSN UID of the underlying card phone?
PKOC does not. PKOC is a very, very large, so the identifier PKOC, which is derived from the public key, is a very, very large number. And you can map that to certain identifiers, but you can't, such as, a 10-byte ISO identifier, for example, but you can't map it to a CSN, because that's CSN is typically an incremental number that you determine yourself and put on a card. So PKOC does not allow you to do that.
Rodney, are there any non-standard OSTP commands required to implement PKOC? Do the commands fall in the base specification?
The commands to support the reader-based PKOC processing fall in the standard specification. There's a command that returns card numbers. It's called the OSTP raw command. It's already set up to handle up to 1,000 bits, and so even the largest possible PKOC credential number, would fit into that. So there's no changes if they're following the base OSTP specification.
Thank you. David Edwin, is PKOC more secure than mobile wallet credentials?
So if you look from a wallet, right, a wallet is a wallet, right? It's a holder of things. So you can put in multiple credentials into it. And so basically, you can put whatever credentials that the wallet supports into it. And we do think that the wallet providers will also support PKOC as we release the specification. So credential into wallet. So that's how it works.
Yeah, Dave, if I can add to that for a moment, it's important to understand that the secure element or trusted module platform, TPM, that's on the smart card or phones, and in this case, we're talking digital wallets, so phones, is the same exact secure element that the wallet uses, right? So in terms of storage and security and cryptography, there is no difference, right? The difference is, of course, with wallet, there are additional benefits, right? If you've been looking at digital wallet at all, the ability to potentially use the credential when the battery is dead on the phone, or to use it in enhanced mode where I can go up to the reader and through that identifier be able to interact with my credential without unlocking the phone. So the wallet definitely has enriched benefits over what an app would have. But from a security perspective, same exact secure element, same exact cryptography. So there is no difference in the security of the credential itself.
Okay. I'm going to open this up to anybody. How can PKOC benefit elevator destination dispatch for multi-tenant sites? Maybe David or Jason, either one of you could talk on that.
I'm happy to discuss on this one. So I think the key word is interoperability is one of the biggest benefits, right? In a multi-tenant building where destination dispatch is serving multiple customers, it's an enormous benefit if we can have one credential which can be enrolled, and one of the tenants is using a 64-bit, the other is using 128, yet a third is using the 256-bit, yet that one credential is fully interoperable across all of them, right? And being able to be serviced by the, maybe taking the common denominator. So the 64-bit version is what gets enrolled for the destination dispatch, and then all of the various PAC systems for whatever the tenanted floors are can use their length or need from the PKOC credential. But from a user, it's still one, right? Whether it's card or mobile, I get that full interoperability, and that's definitely a huge advantage for destination dispatch.
Thanks, Jason. GW, what are the advantages of using PKOC over current card technologies out there?
The primary one is the fact that you can use crypto that's been certified. Public key has been looked at a lot. There's a lot of research around it. So we're not using proprietary cryptography, is what I would say. Of course, we are also using legacy credentials that have no cryptography at all. So that's also a bit, if you're moving from PROX to PKOC, then you're getting a huge bump in security.
Great, thank you. Jason, please walk through the scenario of a PKOC module in the panel, payload in the OSDP communication.
Sure. So if I understand that question correctly, in the mode where PKOC is in the panel, I would have a credential that is able to respond to a reader that is PKOC enabled. That PKOC enabled reader, instead of doing the decrypt and then passing on the credential to the panel over whether it's weekend or OSDP, would then actually take that full encrypted communication, the PKOC packet, and send it on to the controller, whether that was a Mercury or an iStar, or if that panel has a PKOC module in it, then the decrypt would happen at the panel side. And from there, the credential would then be processed by the controller and handled, right? So it would be end-to-end then, doing a PKOC communication. Now, it's important to understand that OSDP for manufacturers can have manufacturer extensions and other values. So it still may be desirable to and preferable to decrypt on the reader and use OSDP, because they're using OSDP for other purposes than just passing PKOC. So but those options exist depending on what the customer's needs are.
Okay, thank you. Rodney, who will issue and manage the PKOC credentials?
The PKOC credential, because it's based on asymmetric cryptography, the credential itself is the thing that generates the key pair. So either in the mobile application using a secure element, or in a card using a secure element, the key gets generated, the key pair gets generated there, and then the process is that the public key has to be enrolled into your access control system or whatever your solution is. The lock needs to know it. So there's a process there which we've described in the specification that's on the website, where so for example, from a mobile device, the thing would generate the key pair, and then the public key component would be pushed up to some infrastructure that is interconnected to the access control system to put the card number in the system. Or you use an enrollment reader, one of these USB attached readers at an enrollment station in the badging office.
Okay, thank you. Jason, what are the benefits of joining PSIA as opposed to only downloading the specification?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I always feel it's important to say that joining is not a requirement. INID is a perfect example of a company who downloaded the specification, implemented PKOC in a reader, and then showed up at a trade show and said, I have a PKOC compliant reader, right? Without ever having at that point been a member or participated. But I use them as an example to the answer to this question because they later did join the working group level to be able to collaborate, get access to Slack and some of the updates to the new specifications coming, so they could be early in the adoption of it, and as well to collaborate and make sure that their solution was fully in compliance. So it's, certainly membership gives you access to a support group, that could be beneficial, albeit my personal opinion is that PKOC is fairly lightweight in terms of its understanding and complexity to implement. But we're still talking about cryptography, and if it's a new topic for you, then the benefit of having access to the working group and some of the internal tools like Slack where we share information, updates, apps, our GitHub repository, those aspects become an additional benefit.
Thank you. Rodney, is PKOC or is the PKOC module a component that has to be baked into the access control panel, or can it be added to an additional component like a 𝘴𝘰𝘤𝘬 to OSTP converter?
Yes, it can be added. So the model there is that the panel, for various reasons, has probably already got a secure element. The hardware's probably been enhanced at some point to be able to support that kind of thing. And so the idea here is you would use the appropriate OSTP commands to talk to a reader, which is capable of talking to Bluetooth or NFC devices, but doesn't actually have the crypto in it. So at that point, the messages go back to the device at the other end of the OSTP connection. So for example, if you had an OSTP to 𝘴𝘰𝘤𝘬 converter connected to a classic 𝘴𝘰𝘤𝘬-based panel, the converter, it's built in modern times. It's got a processor in it. It's got all the usual kind of features. So it's quite practical to consider a converter device that has the processing and crypto capabilities to do the panel side of the operation.
To the group in general, if I lose my phone with a PKOC app and credential on it, how does PKOC handle this risk?
Yeah, David, this is Jason. I can take that question. So it's important, if we go back to the definition, we are talking about a secure element, and when the app is installed or the SIO put on a card, you're going to generate one time that public and private key pair. So if I upgrade my phone, lose my phone, get a new phone, however that works, and you reinstall the app, you are going to generate a new public and private key pair, and therefore have a new credential. The benefit being that it's just that you have to re-enroll that, right? It's not there's not a complexity of having to purchase or a certificate, a central authority source that has to reissue or manage this credential. It's because it's decentralized. So the requirement there is that you would have to re-enroll it, but that it's easily available.
Okay. David Edwin, what is elliptic curve? It's a term that's used quite often with our discussions of PKOC.
When you have asymmetric cryptography, you could choose to use a modulo n, which would be a long, like a 2,000, 3,000 bit key. But when you use an elliptic curve, you can basically use it primarily to shorten the key length, so that you don't have to send very large number of bits for the identity in effect. And that helps in the access control systems, especially when you want to keep it backwards compatible with some of the legacy systems. So that's the elliptic curve part. It's primarily to shorten the key length.
Great. Jason, what are the possibilities of integrating with the legacy global security companies?
So it's a great question. And at the end of the day, there's some choices that need to be made, right? So integration could be that, the PACS solution, whatever it is, whether that's, a Johnson Controls, a Honeywell, a Genetec, an AMAG, literally does nothing other than put in a card format that meets the 64 bits, 128 bits, or 256 bits, depending on what their reader is going to support, and then enrolls that card number, right? So for the manufacturer at that point, from the PACS level, there's really no heavy investment to be able to support PKOC, and the reader is doing the decrypt and the heavy lifting. Additionally, if they wanted to take that to the next level, they could implement the PKOC module directly in the panel and have the reader doing pass-through of PKOC to the panel. And that certainly would take firmware development and effort of the PACS manufacturers to support that. But that's that's a couple different ways that you can look at how to integrate with with the existing manufacturers that are in the market today.
The other thing to add is that the change that the panel vendors would have to do to support this, if we went to the panel side crypto, the change they would need is very similar to the processing necessary for PIV, the kind of challenge response cryptographic operations. So if the vendors were to choose to do a change, it's similar to the kind of tech that's been done before. It's a known thing.
Another question, what are the target markets of PKOC? Americas, Europe, Asia, or worldwide? I'll take that question on. Basically, PKOC is universal. It can be used in any market of the world. We tend to have more activity right now in the United States. There are some very significant proof of concepts that are taking place in North America, US and Canada. And people are finding it applicable in Europe as well. And we expect that there will be some Europe implementations soon, and Asia, of course. So I don't think that it's specific just to the United States or North America. If there's any more questions, you can enter them now. There's another question. Any performance advantages or disadvantages to storing the secure element on the panel? Are there any hardware manufacturers supporting this now?
Yeah, so I can take that question. This is Jason David. So, certainly, I'm not sure I would call it advantages, disadvantages as much as, trade-offs depending on what your needs are. So, if you're doing the decrypt on the reader and now the public key is being sent basically as a long credential number, that there is still the risk, as you would have with procs today or a 𝘴𝘰𝘤𝘦𝘳 connection, to sniff what's between the reader and the panel. And of course, then that number could be used as a replay attack to the access control. So OSDP, as Rodney has covered well today, allows us to address that issue for legacy. But the advantage, if you're not using OSDP extensions or leveraging OSDP for firmware updates, as Rodney was mentioning, then now I can do securely end-to-end the pass of the credential directly to the panel by implementing that module natively there, right? So if you don't have the need for all the additional overhead and complexity of setting up OSDP, then PKOC can simplify that. But there are trade-offs, right? Because as mentioned, there are other benefits of the use of OSDP beyond just PKOC.
Great. How does somebody carry multiple PKOC credentials for access to multiple buildings and selecting the correct one?
That's a great question, and again comes down to sort of a desire of how you want to use PKOC. So SaferScan, as an example, that does facial recognition, their PKOC app, which is available on the app stores, if you were to download and look at it, gives you the ability through the APIs with the secure element to generate multiple credentials. So I could have one PKOC that's used for building A and another PKOC credential used for building B, if that's what was desired. Now, I think the thinking behind that would be like a government facility that doesn't want the same credential to be enrolled at the gym using PKOC at the door as they would for their facility, right? So they want to have one that is specific for them. So that certainly could be done. There's nothing that precludes having more than one public key pair generated by an app. But at the end of the day, the real power of the interoperability in PKOC is that I do have just one that can be used everywhere securely. So it's more of a preference if you wanted to have multiple, and and PKOC as a specification supports the ability to do that. But I personally believe most people are going to just leverage the one credential as necessary, and and that way, if I have to replace my phone and I'm not regenerating 3, 4, or 5 credentials, right? It's just the one.
Yeah, exactly. So you just re-enroll in all the buildings, and then you will have a single credential, which will allow you to access all the buildings. So that, yeah.
Okay, another question. NFC supports ISO 15693. Will PKOC as well?
Right now, the communication layer is 14443, and within 14443, we have the 7816 data elements, which is also, that's been around a long time for talking to smart cards. It's the APDU stuff. That's what we support currently. So 14443 is the communication protocol, and the wireless protocol, if you will, and then the way you talk to the applets or to the card is 7816.
And as Jack mentioned, there's also support for other tech. It's not technology specific. So like there are mobile devices which could do UWB, the example I would give. So radio technology is not a problem. And my understanding is 15693 uses this same message format, the ISO 7816 messages. It's just a different radio. I'm sure the 15693 folks will cringe that it's just a different radio.
Okay. And one more question. Would access control hardware that already supports OSDP transparent mode be able to support PKOC with processing at panel side, or would additional development work be required?
So if they're supporting transparent mode is where the 70x16 commands, sorry, I keep using the standards numbers on you. These messages are sent from the panel to the reader, and then the reader sends them out to the card. So if your panel can do the appropriate 7816 commands for PKOC, then it could use transparent mode to do this. And that's what's in the specification, the commands that need to be issued. And it's a fairly simple set. It's also, again, very much like the existing use cases for transparent mode. So yes, that should be possible.
Okay, thanks everybody for the great questions. Next slide, please. There's some places that you can get some additional information. We have a QR code here that will take you to a very detailed and comprehensive document created by Jason Ouellette and Ed Chandler called What is PKOC? In addition, on April 3rd, we will be having a demonstration, interoperability demonstration at ISC West at 5:30. All the people who have registered for this event will be invited to that. Also, feel free to email me directly any questions. I'll make sure that they get routed to the proper person. And unless there's any other questions or comments, I think we'll wrap this up. Thanks everybody for joining.